Hello, everyone. This is Paul, the Oaken Knight, with a review of Axis and Allies Anniversary Edition, published by none other than Avalon Hill. Not only published by Avalon Hill, but this is one of 3 games published in honor of the 50th anniversary of the company. Hence, the Anniversary Edition. Versions of Axis and Allies have actually been around for quite a while, 2 or 3 decades anyway, with most of them focused on elements of World War II. Some focus on Europe, some on the Pacific, some even have zombies, but most commonly they encompass all of World War II in a box. The Anniversary Edition is one such version. The 24 by 16-inch box is adorned with some of the war's senior leaders and weaponry. Interesting to note that the images are highly slanted towards the U.S. It's good being the arsenal of democracy. No Axis heads of state are present, but it's good to know that FDR is indeed the top of the heap. The reverse is standard fare, showing a game in progress. No complexity or solitaire ratings are offered. Upon opening said box, you are greeted with individual component boxes for each nationality, plus 2 more for shared game components. Land, sea, and air are all well represented, along with various utility counters to show area control in the map and other game functions. I gotta say, this is a Class A presentation. The rulebook is well organized, well written, full color, and printed on decent weight matte paper. It does not give an extended example of play, but does have examples sprinkled throughout. I'd put complexity at a 3 on a 9-point GMT scale and solitaire rating of 7, which is good. The game was not purpose-designed as a solitaire game, but has no hidden information or mechanics that make it difficult to play solitaire. However, you are playing 6 different belligerent nations, which makes sticking to a sensible strategy a bit more challenging when managing everything yourself. The map consists of 3 hard-mounted but separate panels. When laid out, the map stretches to 45 by 23.5 inches, which sounds huge, but you will find that certain sections of the European map will seem somewhat crowded once play begins. The game provides gray and red chips that can be stacked underneath the unit figures to relieve some of the congestion. It helps, but some map areas will seem crowded. A&A is an area control game, the map divided into land and sea zones. Land areas are divided into neutral and contested zones. Neutral zones are not in the war and may not be entered or traversed by either side. Naturally, land units work and play on the land, with non-carrier-borne air units also based on land. Land areas generally contain a national insignia showing control at the start of the game, and an economic value yielding production points to its owner each turn. There are no other terrain effects. Water areas are the province of the naval units, who never enter land areas. Land units must be loaded on a naval transport in order to enter a water area. Air units may fly over water so long as a suitable landing area is available to them. So-called one-way kamikaze attacks are not allowed. There are several different types of units in the game, each represented by its own figure. If you look closely, you can actually see sculpting differences between the nationalities, with maybe the Germans getting the most attention. It seems much more threatening to have a stack of Panthers next door than some other tank, even though the national difference is purely eye candy without any game effect. Units are assigned attack and defense values, representing the roll needed to hit an enemy unit. All die rolls are D6 based. Combat is initiated when opposing forces move into an area containing enemy units. Exception: submarines will not initiate combat under some circumstances. Units stop when entering the first enemy-controlled area, with the exception being when tanks enter a vacant enemy-controlled area. They convert the area to their control and continue on to a second area, possibly having combat there. Combat is simultaneous, except for submarines performing a surprise attack. Both sides count up their units by attack or defense value as appropriate, roll big fists full of dice, and extract losses, with 1 unit loss for every hit. An exception is submarines may never hit an aircraft. Combat continues until one side is eliminated, the attacker retreats, or combat being prohibited due to unit type. Attackers may retreat at the end of any round of combat, but defenders are nailed in place. They fight to the death. Should the attacker win a land-based combat, area control is converted and the production points that are available to the winner and loser are adjusted. Combat units have the following ratings: attack, the to-hit number on the attack; defense, the to-hit number on the defense; movement, the number of zones of movement allowed, most are 2; build cost, the number of economic points required to build the unit. Most unit types also have one or more special abilities that are unique to that unit type. For example, battleships require 2 hits to kill and automatically repair if not eliminated at the end of the battle. Infantry units, the most commonly built unit, have an attack value of 1, defense of 2, movement of 2, and a build cost of 3 and no special abilities. Because 3 is the lowest available build cost of any unit, and the owner selects which units are hit/eliminated after each round of combat, infantry are truly the cannon fodder of the battlefield. The following units are available to build. For land units: infantry, cheap, okay on defense, inept on the attack. Artillery, medium cost, okay on the attack, okay on the defense, and pairs with an infantry unit on the attack, upgrading the infantry unit's attack value from a 1 to a 2. Armor, great on the attack and defense, but expensive. Naval units: aircraft carriers, can host up to 2 fighters on the sea. Battleships, expensive, powerful, and takes 2 hits to kill. Cruisers, medium cost, medium attack and defense. Destroyers, semi-cheap, reveal and inhibit submarines. Submarines, cheap, as far as naval units go anyway, and have special abilities when destroyers are not present. Aircraft, fighters, great on defense, good on the attack, medium range, and expensive. Bombers, bad on the defense, great on the attack, long range, can conduct strategic warfare, and very expensive. There are also 2 more unit types which may be built, but differ from the others because they may be captured and put to use by the capturing nationality. These are AAA. AAA rolls 1d6 against each and every attacking aircraft in the area, hitting on a 1. The roll is made and has its effect 1 time per combat just prior to the first combat round. Factories. The presence of a factor allows the placement of newly created units up to the economic value of the land area that the factory resides in. It is the only unit that may be placed on the map without a pre-existing factory in the respective land area. It may be captured, but can never move and can never be destroyed. As an example, the Commonwealth player is likely to build a factory in India during its first move. A factory in India with its 3-point economic value will allow placement of up to 3 units per turn and put pressure on the Japanese player. Without it, the Japanese will almost certainly take India later in the game. Factories may also be subject to a special strategic bombing attack performed exclusively by bomber units. Each bomber that survives AAA rolls 1d6 and delivers that number of hits to the factory complex. Each hit reduces the number of new enemy units that the factory can place on the map by 1. Up to twice the capacity of the factory to place new units may be inflicted. The factory owner pays 1 economic point per damage point to effect repair. For example, the factory that resides in Germany, a 10-point economic area, may take up to 20 bomb hits. Should the factory take 10 or more hits, no new German units may be built in Germany until economic points are paid to effect repair. Now let's focus on the Anniversary Edition itself. There are 2 major differences that make the Anniversary Edition different from other Axis and Allies games I have played. First, Italy is a player nation aligned with the Axis. It has its own units, economy, and capital. Its most noteworthy asset is its fleet, which controls the central Mediterranean and shields the Italian homeland from attack. Second, China, while still U.S. controlled, has its own units and pseudo-economy. For every 2 areas of China that China controls, it produces an infantry unit each turn. The economic value of Chinese land units are only credited to conquering powers, and their loss has no effect on the U.S. economy. So, for example, China begins the game with 7 areas that it controls. Therefore, every turn, if left unmolested, is going to pump out 3 infantry units. Along with a single fighter unit the Chinese begin the game with, representing the Flying Tigers, China can challenge weakly held land areas owned by Japan and may be a major thorn in their side if left uncontested. As a result, China will likely have Japan's full attention for the first 3 or 4 turns of the game. Japan attacking Russia will be off the agenda until China is caged. Sequence of play. Each of the 6 belligerent nations performs the same play sequence independent from all other nations. Once a nation completes its play sequence, then the next nation does the same, until all 6 of the belligerents has had its player turn. Nations execute their player turn in a prescribed order, depending only on the scenario being played. For example, the order for the 1942 scenario is Japan, Soviet Union, Germany, Commonwealth, Italy, and finally the United States. Within a player turn, the phases are: first, research. Pay to roll dice and get more special abilities for your units. Second, purchase unit. Note that simply buying units does not put them on the map. To put units on the map, you need factories. Third, combat movement. Enter enemy-controlled areas. Fourth, conduct combat. Wherever enemy units are in the same area, generally speaking, there will be combat. Roll buckets of dice and conquer new areas. 5. Non-combatant move. Enter friendly controlled areas, but not areas that were just taken in the current turn. 6th, mobilize new units. Okay, now you get to put units that you purchased earlier onto the map, subject to factory limitations. 7th and last, collect income. Get new production bucks for the next turn. How to win the game? There are 18 strategic land areas on the map. Prior to beginning play, players decide how many one faction must control to achieve a win. A standard game requires 15 of the 18 areas. So, what do I think about Axis and Allies Anniversary Edition? Well, let's talk about some positives. First, China plays much better than in any other Axis and Allies game that I've played. Japan must pay attention to it, and unlike other versions of Axis and Allies I have seen, they have to leave Russia alone initially. Second, strategic bombing works and may be used by the United States player against Germany as early as turn 1. Third, the game plays like Axis and Allies with complex strategy and simple mechanics. Let's take a look at the downside. First, submarine-based strategic warfare is completely missing from the game. There is no modeling of a seaborne line of communication. Subs are just cheap, somewhat sneaky naval units. They are only dangerous if you lack destroyers. So build a couple of destroyers and lead a stress-free and happy life. Second, research. I don't like the research rules and do not use them. To do research, a nation pays 5 economic points and buys a single 1d6 die roll with 1 chance in 6 of success. Generally, of course, the die will do nothing. If the die does something, there are 2 tables that the player may choose from, each containing 6 different research advances. The player picks the table and rolls the die and gets what they get. Note that the player has no say in what it is they're researching, which is kind of a problem since even if you get a research item, it may not be of particular use to the nationality that did the research. Generally speaking, I say that the research is quirky and can basically waste a lot of points and get you nothing, or you could be lucky and get all the good stuff and your opponent's going to say, well, you won the game because you rolled well in the research rolls. Not very satisfying either way. So basically, I don't use the research in the game. And finally, play balance. I believe the game suffers from being significantly tilted in favor of the Axis powers. Specifically, Russia, by losing Moscow, may effectively and repeatedly be eliminated from the game during the German move of turn 3. That sounds like a harsh assessment, but I have seen it happen over the course of a half a dozen multiplayer games with different players and different skill levels every time. Consider that the Western Allies have very little in the way of troops and transports on turn 1. By turn 2, they can begin the process of being a threat to Germany, but that's it. Germany moves ahead of the Western Allies, so with only 2 moves before Moscow is taken, there is no time to do anything meaningful. I think my favorite beat the Soviet Union fast strategy was done by a first-time player. As Germany, he simply built tanks. Just tanks. Only tanks. Russia gets mowed over. Or how about ignoring the West Wall? Pull the armor and aircraft out, send to Poland. With only 2 Allied moves to contend with, not much to fear. The Italians? Build tanks and send to Russia. Slice it any way you want, the Soviet Union gets crushed like a grape. But there is an easy fix. Before the game starts, simply require each player to secretly bid a number of economic points for control of the Soviets. The low bidder will be Soviet and enjoy a number of economic points added to his total each and every turn equal to his bid. No need for special rules, as the players themselves will determine how much extra points the Soviets need. Alternatively, you could introduce a Lend-Lease rule that would allow the United States and possibly Great Britain to transfer economic points directly to the Soviets, but of course, any defeated fascist will blame the rule for their loss. I can already hear the whining. Okay, my friends, that's enough for now. If you have not yet subscribed, please consider doing so. It helps you follow along with what we are doing here, as well as making the channel stronger. And give me a thumbs up, and even better, send a comment. I enjoy reading what you have to say. So, this is Paul, the Oaken Knight, wishing you all a pleasant evening. Thanks for watching.